This is a special workshop for FanCon 2023. It's all about how to make a good solo performance, how to choose the proper tricks for that, and how to combine them into combinations, what kind of character you should make, and what kind of music you should use for your performance. I'm going to give you some examples with fans, but actually everything I say is true for any kind of prop, so it doesn't really matter. And also, I will try to entertain you with like examples of my own performances of the past, and hopefully that's going to be useful for you. If you don't know me, my name is Ram. I've been performing for the past 10 or 15 years, and basically, although I'm not any kind of professional choreographer or anything like this, I've done like really thousands of these solo performances. So hopefully, my experience might be helpful to some of you. Let us begin with a slightly controversial topic of what kind of tricks are worthy of the stage and what kind of tricks aren't, and what is a trick in general, and which moves aren't even a trick. Well, there are obviously difficult moves like tosses and balances and this kind of more like circus-like tricks, which are clearly difficult, and so you'll likely impress your audience with those. So there's no question about those. But there are many moves which are not so difficult, at least they're not obviously difficult. And the question is which one of those moves you should leave at home and which one you can bring to the stage. So I propose a criteria that a good trick creates some kind of illusion or tricks your brain in some way. To give you some examples, like when you do the isolation, you obviously create an illusion of fans kind of connected, right? Or even if you when you do a simple weave, right? It's not just a weave. You're supposed to create illusion that the fans are connected. So when you do fountains, you create this illusion like the fans are really, rolling around your body, and they are even like passing through your body without obvious kind of interruption of their rotation, and that's an illusion if done correctly. But there is other way to do it, right? I could do fountain like this, and that would completely ruin illusion, even though technically it's technically it's correct, right? So this is my point that you have to do the tricks that obviously create an illusion and maintain it. If you do it imperfectly, so any imperfection really kills the illusion. Let me give you a few more examples. Here, for example, is a trick that I perform in the invitation video to the festival. This is the flaps kind of passing thing. And this is the same trick done on the stage of this festival. Obviously, well, it says fire, but clearly I'm not doing it as well, and so illusion is kind of broken. Here's another example of a move that looks pretty good on video, but when most people do it, they do something like that, unfortunately. And that completely renders the whole move meaningless because obviously there's no illusion anymore, because the illusion was to do it fan into fan like that, perfectly
clear.
but if it's not symmetric, it's broken. Likewise, an isolation, there is isolation and there is something like that, which is not an isolation anymore. There are flaps, which looks like so, really flappy. And there are flaps like this, which is gone. There is a alternative rotation, and there is some kind of, thing like this, which ruins the whole thing. Or favorite American linear weak isolation. It has to be weak to weak. That's why it's called linear weak isolation. If it's kind of like this, it's already sort of broken. You can also ruin the illusion by repetition. So if you've done it once in your performance, there is a kind of, oh, wow, what was that? How it was connected? But if you keep repeating it up and down and left and right and up and down, you you kind of again ruining it because you're like now everybody can figure it out. You're like a magician that shows the trick over and over and over again until everybody can see what was the point of this trick. So don't ruin your tricks by imperfection, repetition, or just lazy performance. Always try to make it perfect as you can. And for that, also practice to perfection. I mean, when you do, like say, a fountain, learn to perform it standing still, without bending, without trying to choreograph your way out of it. Some people kind of try to choreograph some kind of things like this. Don't try to cheat. Really, learn trick first, perfectly. Then you can choreograph it in a way that suits your character. When you select tricks for your performance, I advise you to choose dynamic versions of the trick over the static version. For example, if you do a 3-bit weave or 2-bit weave, you should do 2-bit weave with a pirouette. If you do a windmill, you should always add a pirouette to it or add extension to it. Or if you do some kind of, isolations, you can at least add some kind of steps to it. Step forward or backward or something like that. In general, it's better to make a little choreography for each of the moves you do, especially your favorite moves. For example, whenever I do my favorite windmill, I always add a pirouette because that's just my little choreography for this move. And likewise, you should make a little choreography for each of your favorite moves. On the flip side of that, I advise you not to use some kind of hardcore tech tricks in your performance. I'm sure you know what I mean. It's kind of all kinds of bizarre geometry tech, which is not really very obvious, to the to the audience and of what is the point in this. I mean, we understand it, right? We understand what's the point, but the models they don't get it, and it's understandable because even when we watch, performance with other tricks, with other props, we cannot necessarily always understand what's the point of that. It really doesn't matter whether it's objectively hard or not. So, for example, when you do easiest tosses in the world, this kind of toss, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it in like 5 minutes of practice. But audience usually responds really well to it because they think it's hard. The opposite example would be like any kind of tech which we know is kind of hard to do, but actually it's how to say it doesn't look so hard, and that's all what matters. Next, I wanted to discuss a bit a structure of your act, specifically the beginning and the end, because often we can see that the performer goes on the stage and like doesn't really know what to do at the beginning and like how to bow and leave at the end, and that looks weird. Here's an example of like the same performance that I do when I was really young, and I go to the stage and I don't know what to do, like don't know how to begin, and there's no like character introduction or anything like that. And at the end, I'm kind of bowing and everybody's like clapping, but it's kind of messy and a little bit hushed. But here's the same performance years later, where I already know much better what to do. It looks like I own the stage. I really put my things there. I start music there, and at the end, I bow in the right moment of the music, and that looks obviously way better. Also, you have to think about when are you going to set your props on fire. Yeah, there are two options, obviously, to do it behind the stage, but that's sometimes not a good idea because it starts burning. But the DJ may be slow, or like your introduction can take a long time, and then your fuel is kind of already burning. So it's better to actually do it on the stage. But when you do it on the stage, you also have to think how will you do it. You it's best when there is some kind of source of fire on the stage, and as a plan B, you should always have some lighter in your pocket. That's example of my other performance. It's my first performance when the organizers kind of a little bit screwed the fire on the stage, and it just died out. And I had to follow the plan B with the lighter, and the lighter doesn't really work because the fuel, drops into it and things like this. And the DJ already started the music, and that's a disaster. That's awful performance. So don't be like that. Make sure that there is a source of fire to start. Also, I really encourage you to practice a bit with the fire, with the fuel that is provided by the festival. Sometimes when there's like a contest, everybody is provided the fuel, and often this fuel is not so good. So you have to check how it burns, how hot it is, how fast it burns out, and things like that. Don't hesitate to do it right there at the venue. Even if other people can see you, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you do the good performance. I also want to discourage you from making some kind of little, how should I put it, a little choreographed elements before you even take your props. Like quite often you can see people go and the prop is like on the floor and they start some kind of dance, some kind of character introduction, or some kind of walking the stage. you know, and it's supposed to introduce the character, for example, but often it's complete darkness, so we cannot even see this character. So it's always better to do everything in contact with your prop, like while holding it. In fact, you have plenty of time as you go from the back of the stage to the center, as you set your things on fire. You have plenty of time to kind of play it out, to kind of look at something, have some object, or in some other way introduce your character, like in all these videos I try to exemplify. And that's more than enough. You don't need to choreograph a separate little piece to kind of do the theatrical part and then spinning part and another theatrical part in the beginning, in the middle. It really rarely looks good. So also on this note, typically we structure the whole performance as like from small to big. For example, it can be as simple as starting with just one fan and doing some simple things, doing some kind of exploration of the possibility of the prop. That's kind of what typical juggling performance looks like. And then you have like two props and you do something with your two props, and then you have your third prop, and the tension grows and the difficulty of the tricks grows. So you can go from a small to larger and larger, and then you do like your big crazy juggling tricks. Obviously, that's not everyone's case, but that's how you should think about your performance, from simpler to harder and bigger tricks. At the same time, we cannot always do like hard trick at the end. So we typically mix good tricks with fillers. The fillers are like simple combinations, like a simple, weaves and things like that. You do some weaves, and suddenly you do your trick, which is like a main trick, bam, and then you continue to your fillers. That's the idea behind the structuring your performance. And on this note, you should kind of create checkpoints. So your big, complicated trick should be well connected to music, and that should be a checkpoint that you know that at this moment you should do this trick. And those fillers, they can be a little bit more flowy, and they don't necessarily need to be choreographed precisely. I mean, of course, it's better to choreograph the whole act exactly each move in the time when it has to be, but it's not always possible. I mean, it's always possible. It's just like most people are lazy to do it, and including me. I mean, so at very least, create checkpoints and kind of create patterns which allow you to nicely enter your great trick. And speaking of the structure of your performance, I want to speak about the multi-props. Like, it's a multi-prop means there are several props used in the same act. Unless your act is 10 minutes, you should really think twice before using more than one prop. I mean, using like one, two, and then three props of the same kind is okay, but when you start speaking poem, then something else, and then something else, that's kind of messy. And it doesn't necessarily improve your performance, even especially if you're not as good with one prop as you are with the other prop. And likewise, you should think twice before involving any other people in your solo act, because it often looks very strange that there's some other person who is not you, but you kind of interact with him. You are like let's say, a guy, and there's like your girlfriend, and there's some kind of drama, but it looks so cheap. Quite often it looks very cheap, and it's not a duo, but it's here's an example of my early performance when I do all these mistakes. Actually, like, there is this other person that is there and creates all this chaos on the stage, which is completely unnecessary. Also, I changed the props. I think in this performance there are like at least 4 different props, which is crazy, which is completely crazy. And yeah, like with fans, I only do like very simple things. So it really was not worth it, but that was the dark ages of the floors. So here's another example which is much better as I go backstage to exchange my prop to guitar. There are all these people that create this chaos and create this ambience of the concert, and then I go forward and I crash guitar. That looks awesome. So that is a positive, I would say, example. So yeah, think twice before really involving, overcomplicating your performance. And on this note, also, when you speak about your costume or decorations on the stage, you can use decoration and a costume, but also try not to overcomplicate it too much. Obviously, that all tragic accidents with like fire show often related to the very crazy costumes. And the decorations are rarely worth it also. And make sure to practice fails because you're gonna need those. Almost certainly you will fail at some kind of trick, and make sure that you know how to pick it up, not looking very disappointed about it, I'll say. I want to say a few words about the concept of the character, like who you are on the stage and what kind of idea your show as a whole conveys. This concept is not always present in like American floor stage, but amongst jugglers, this is often present. Like the jugglers often make some kind of characters, and in Eastern florts contest, especially, this is even one of the criteria. There must be some kind of character, so that's kind of important and nice to have. So the character typically consists of three things: it's music and a costume, which like what you wear and which shows who you are and how you are acting this character, how you're acting it out. So all three should go together. Otherwise, for example, if you have a costume of some assassin, but your performance and music have nothing to do with that, that whole idea of performance is destroyed, so it looks ridiculous. And then costume should not necessarily be very expensive or luxurious, but it also should not be regular clothing. If it's just a regular stuff from supermarket, like everybody can see that this is a regular cloth, it's not a costume. So this performance is really cheap. And when people think so, that's really horrible. Also, like often people use some kind of fire Burning Man clothing, but that looks more like a hippie cloth. It also not always looks like a costume, or at least it's not quite clear costume of whom it is. Another important concept here is kind of owning the stage. Often you see people go into the center of the stage and just perform their thing, and the stage is just behind them. That shows that this person does not own this stage, and this is not this world of this character. You have to create the world in the stage for these 5 minutes of your performance. When you enter the stage, you should show that you are here. This is your world. You go across the stage. You start your fire in one corner. You put your little things here, here. For example, this performance, I put here the little player and like play music from it, and I really own the stage in some sense. Although stage is a very huge stadium, and yeah, at least there is some effort to do that. Or with these little elements, additional things like the samurai performance, for example, I throw the sakura to show that this is really, really Japan and things like that. And with the music, I also kind of feel I don't rush to start spinning. I kind of introduce the where we are, what we are in the Asia, and things are like that. That is always very nice to have. And funny thing that nobody actually remembers our tricks after the performance. Everybody remembers the character. So everybody remembers like, oh, he did a like samurai that year, but nobody really remembers what kind of tricks I did. And that's the thing that probably people will remember you for your character. So maybe it's really worth spending time thinking about it and creating a nice character for a show. Finally, I want to say a few words about the music you perform to. Obviously, your music should be strongly linked to your character, so in supported and vice versa, the character kind of goes along with music. Then music should also be according to your prop. For example, contact stuff is a very slow prop. You should really choose slower music. Fans are also rather slow. Don't be that guy who chooses the very fast music and then tries to spin fans as fast as possible. That looks ridiculous. And also that Papuya faster, obviously, so you can choose faster track. The music should really have some emotional moments, some ups and downs. Because if it's just electronic music going very like flat, it will not be a good music for performance. Well, in general, I must say that there is music for the stage and there is music for a personal player. Please don't choose just a track you like to perform to, because chances are other people don't like what you like. Choose the music for the stage, and we can debate about musical taste and things like this. That not to question your favorite music, but there is a difference. between music composed by composer and performed by musicians who learned to play instruments for many years and some track performed by beatmaker on the computer. So these are two different kinds of music, and only one of them sounds like expensive, good music, proper, appropriate music for the stage. Yes, there are plenty of good performances with electronic music and the rock and the hip hop and all kinds of music like that, but if you want to go safe, go with more acoustic music. If not classical music, then more jazzy music or some piano and cello. There's a reason why Cirque du Soleil, for example, always use this kind of music that creates some fantasy soundscape, creates certain ambience, and they would never go with hip hop or something like that. On this note, it's better not to use very famous track because just people will kind of know the track and it will sound too pop and will not sound like something new and exclusive or will not sound like look like art, basically. Also, don't expect people to know the words of the song because or understand the words as they hear it because they will not listen so carefully. And unless there's some really repeating word and you do this, and it's not gonna work. For example, in this performance, we actually did a move. Every time they say windmill, we do windmill. When they say circle, they say circle. That's cool, but I mean, I'm sure nobody ever got it because that just was a joke for us. So I wouldn't rely on the people understanding the lyrics of the song. And God forbid you trying to sing and open your mouth along with the words of the song. That's awful. That's horrible. And then you should work with your music. So you have to choose appropriate length, first of all. There's no reason to go beyond 3 minutes with a solo act with a single prop. You should learn how to cut music. It's not so difficult. Next, very important, you have to put something at the beginning of your music. Try not to start your performance as the music starts because it will be impossible. Put something at the beginning. For example, in some of the shows, I add some kind of ambient sounds to give myself time to actually go to the stage. The music is already feeling the ambience with the sounds of Japan, for example, here, or some other sounds which kind of set the stage. Don't expect the DJ to, start the music in exactly the right moment. And likewise, the ending of the music should be very clear. Never choose music that just dies out. Never choose music that doesn't have like a dramatic end. There should be clear end, and you should be clearly ending in this end bowing. It should be a very emotional moment. Like that, for example, like when I do like my best trick and I catch, and the music stops, and everybody is happy. And also, if you know what you're doing, you can actually change the music. You can change the speed of some portions to fit your kind of performance goals. You can enhance some moments to make it more epic. For example, in this performance, I actually changed the track a lot. I started with just this Japanese harp sounds, and then I added all these drums and all these other things on top of it by myself. I understand it's obviously not for everybody, but if you have a friend, musician who can help you, it's not as difficult as it sounds. You can do it in a couple of hours, actually. So don't hesitate to experiment with the music. That's all I wanted to show you today. Let's summarize a bit. First of all, choose carefully the tricks that you are going to perform on the stage. Don't do some weird techie moves that muggles have no chance to understand. Only choose big, beautiful tricks which are obviously difficult or tricks that create some kind of obvious illusion. And practice your tricks to the point that where the illusion is clear. Because if you fail the illusion, the whole point of performing this trick is kind of gone. Combine it into little combinations and add a little bit of choreography. Try to perform everything in dynamics. If you perform something, try to make a pirouette out of it, and so on. Make sure to have some kind of character, some kind of idea of your performance, so that costume and music and your behavior all go along, like it all represents some kind of character, some kind of atmosphere. If not some obviously recognizable person, then at least some kind of ambience, some kind of character. I mean, that's what it is, right? Make sure to work with the music, create some kind of entry, make sure that there's clear end. Practice your performance a lot. Basically, good performance is created by lots of practice. You cannot make it in 1 week. You have to practice like 1 month or 2 months to the point where you can run through your performance very clearly without thinking about it when it's like inside your muscle memory. That's how you liberate yourself from thinking about what move to do next. And once you're free, your mind can now focus on, eye contact with audience. It can think about your posture and your movements on the stage and how it, like other small details. But when your mind is just locked thinking about what move to do next and what was there next, what will happen, like what kind of music is there after this beat, you will never be able to be free on the stage, like so don't hope that someday you will just go on the stage and make a best improvisation of your life because it will never happen. Only, I mean, it might happen, but it's unlikely. So bet on practicing a lot and making sure that you really know what you're doing. And with practice, and also try to record your performance from time to time. You will see the mistakes maybe that I already mentioned to you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you were insulted by all of this stuff, dislike this video and subscribe and things like this. Thank you for watching. See you next time.